Good morning, everyone. My name is MightyStream. I'm going to do your June the 5th spiritual principle a day in a meditation. If you need to reach me, feel free to do so at recoveryofhope21@gmail.com. I'm going to read fast as I can today. All right. The title of the meditation is Valuing Self-Acceptance Over Validation. We no longer have to look for the approval of others because we are satisfied with being ourselves. That comes from IP number 19, Self-Acceptance. The 12 steps are the solution. Let me put a waiver out there. If I lose my voice, I'm going to continue to read. Okay? All right. For many of us, needing others' approval or seeking validation is perched near the top of our character defects list. We have lived in constant fear of making the wrong choices and others knowing our faults, weaknesses, and mistakes. We did everything we could to avoid being judged and actively, sometimes obsessively, sought others to tell us we were worthy, lovable, desirable, or cool. After a lifetime of self-deprecation, self-pity, and self-harm, how do we gain self-acceptance? Self-awareness is key to self-acceptance. Working our steps sparks that awareness. By sharing our inventories, assessing our defects, and struggling not to act on them, we gain a new perspective. We have been our most vigorous judges and harshest punishers, not others. We harmed ourselves with the delusion that others' approval would make us satisfied with being ourselves. The emptiness we feel cannot be filled by validation from others. We have to find it within ourselves. Understanding what doesn't work is a good place to start. And soon we see that self-acceptance is an inside job that doesn't happen with a flip of a switch. We work hard to accept ourselves as we are now so we can make the changes we want to see. We can lovingly reintegrate parts of ourselves we used to disown because they were of no use to us in active addiction. Recovery helps us revamp mistakes into learning experiences rather than excuses to rag on ourselves and quit trying. As we continue to take personal inventory, we discover how we want to live our lives, who we want to spend them with, and what makes our hearts sing. Self-acceptance allows us to value someone's insight without living for their approval or, for that matter, bowing to their condemnation. I know my strengths and my liabilities today, and I'm working to accept both. Others have a role in my life, but it's not to determine my worth. Let's take a moment of silence followed by the we version of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today, please and thank you. Towards the end of that reading, that meditation, my mind went somewhere, and it went to this place. Let me share it with you really quick. When we're talking about self-acceptance over validation, all right? It's a value system. It's just like currency. A penny has the value of 1 cent. Repeat that with me. A penny has the value of 1 cent. 1 cent is 1/100th of 100, right? So you need 100 of these pennies in order to get $1. Common math, we understand it. The thing about having the value in the proper place, for instance, if I use the decimal system, 0.01 is 100ths. When I'm expressing that I need $1 from a person, I'm letting them know that 1.00 is what I need. And this penny that you've given me is only 0.01. I either need another 100 of these, or I need for you to increase the currency that you're using in order to have a different value. Do you have a quarter? A quarter has the value of 25 cents. I only need 4 of those to get to the $1. But how much better would it be if the person that is giving me $1 actually has a $1 bill, which means that the value of that is 100, right? It's easier to carry, it's less weight in your pocket, and it gets you to where you're trying to go faster, which is $1. So here we're talking about self-acceptance versus validation. Versus validation. So where is the value that you have on self-acceptance? Here's the thing. When I first got into recovery, even though it seemed like I had a high value on self-acceptance, that was a masquerade. That was a mask that I was wearing. My self-acceptance was about a penny's worth. I wanted to be at the dollar value. I wanted to have a higher value on self-acceptance. I wanted that. But I was using such a low system, right? A lower level currency to get myself to the height or the depthness or the value of where I wanted to be. So I struggled because I'd had very little self-acceptance in my coin purse, right? Anything that was in there, I was placing the value of 1 cent on it. However, validation from other people, I was giving it a very high value. That level of currency was far more exciting and valuable to me. However, when I would get affirmation, I would get validation, I would get compliments, I would get kudos, right? Accolades. When I would get that, I would come to life. I put a high value on that. But one thing I found out is that seeking validation from others and having a high value placed on that was very detrimental, because one person today can give you accolades and in the same day or the next day be found to be gossiping, character assassinating me. And so even though they were able to give me that $1 up front, it was torn away from me and torn in half. they left me part of what they actually invested in me and then snatched it away by counteracting it, doing something else that was negative. So I learned that placing a high value in others' validation of me was risky and dangerous, and oftentimes full of hot air. Eventually, it would dissipate. Eventually, the value would depreciate. And a lot of times, it didn't take any time at all. And the fact that I would get so high off of that validation meant that I was going to have a longer way down to the earth, a longer way down to the ground, a longer distance to get grounded of experiencing what felt like falling. So I started to eventually learn how to have self-acceptance and valuing that more. And the more I practice self-acceptance, the more I start allowing myself space and room to grow, the more I started nurturing myself, loving myself, liking my faults and my assets, right? The more I start to have that self-acceptance and valuing it, my currency began to change. Instead of being just pennies, it started turning into nickels and dimes. Nickels and dimes started turning into quarters. Quarters started turning into 50-cent pieces. 50-cent pieces started turning into $1 bills. And so I was able to fill myself up with something that was sustainable because I had learned the habits. I had done the exercise of learning how to have self-acceptance. I didn't do it perfectly, but at least I stayed with it. The more that became more valuable to me, the less valuable were the accolades and the compliments, the validation that I had previously sought from other people. That started to depreciate. The value that it had to me was less. So this is where we're talking about recovery being an inside job. A lot of times we're depressed and down and negative and feeling defeated because we're looking for validation to come from other people. We place too much value on what other people say and think about us compared to what we say and think about ourselves. The only way I know to suggest that you change that is by doing step work, using a system that has proven itself. I hope this has been helpful because when your value begins to change, when you start adjusting the scales, leaning more in your favor and less in the favor of someone else's validation being more important than your own personal validation to yourself, the easier life becomes, the less self-obsessed you become, and the more free you will become to be who you are and do the things that you were created to do. My name is Mighty Stream. I've enjoyed talking to you. I hope that you will have a beautiful day on purpose.